Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here in Maine. Brian way over there in Rhode Island. Brian, how's tricks in Rhode Island this week?
It's going okay, Nate. It's a nice sunny day.
Going okay.
Today.
Have you got any? Last week you were on about the dour and rainy weather you've been having down there in Rhode Island. Has there been a break in the clouds to cheer your spirits, Brian?
Yeah, well, I actually took today off from work so that I could go to the DMV and get my Rhode Island driver's license. And, it's been a sunny day today in any case, so that was nice. I wanted to register my vehicle in Rhode Island, but it turns out you also need to go to the local police department before you can go to the DMV and get a VIN check. And along with collecting a whole bunch of other documentation. And so it's like a Legend of Zelda quest trying to get this done.
Man, I remember when I moved to Florida and officially became a resident of the swamp. It was not nearly that hard. In fact, I remember my high school girlfriend was able to acquire a Florida driver's license using her grandma's West Palm Beach address and use that to get herself in-state tuition rates, as if she was a Florida resident. But she was really a resident of Seattle. That's crazy. I had no idea the state of Rhode Island was so Byzantine in their bureaucratic machinations, Brian. That sounds really irritating. There's nothing worse than the paperwork parade that you got to do, at times like this, eh?
That's an enterprising move by your girlfriend there. Well done.
Yeah. I didn't know. I was like, tuition, numbers on paper. Let's just say I got no idea and leave it at that. And I proceeded to work myself a massive student loan debt that I still struggle under to this very day. Looking back, she was very enterprising. That's a good observation, Brian.
Well, here we are doing the System Failure podcast some 20 years later as a result.
Yep. Well, big shout out to Elisa. You remember her. Yeah, she had the driver's license, the Florida driver's license. So pretty good stuff there. Just speaking of your move here, Brian, there was a horrific stabbing out on Vernon Place, outside your old apartment tower up there in Maine, the Hiawatha. I don't know if you saw that on the news. Probably you didn't get that news down there in Rhodey, eh?
Yeah, the only indication I received was from you adding it to our little keep stack of things to talk about.
Yeah, brutal. Well, when you still lived there last year in the fall, like some dude got randomly stabbed in the face by like a homeless person. You may remember that horrific and notorious crime. The police are not. So it was just random. The dude just like these people had no idea. It was unprovoked. These people didn't know each other. Just a random stabbing in the face. Well, in this instance, the person who got stabbed survived, but I guess there was a huge bloody path from like the Vernon Place alley around to the Joe's Super Variety, which is the ground floor convenience store of that particular apartment tower. Anyway, the cops aren't releasing any information about whether these people knew each other, but I guess it was a woman who was homeless who stabbed a victim who is yet to be identified. But I guess that the victim is in the hospital, but with non-life-threatening injuries, so... Yeah, man, I don't know. It's a hair-raising news clipping, but I have to say that things in and around Portland, Maine are not nearly... this is a departure from our usual doom and gloom on the old system failure, but it seems like the city of Portland, I don't know, I wonder if you'd agree with this, got better than the darkest days of 2022 and 2023 when there were just homeless encampments and demonstrations and just civil unrest roiled the city. It got better, right, Brian, towards the end of your tenure there?
I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe that's just maybe what happened is I moved out of the city to the rural area, and so it just seems like it to me.
I feel like I probably know which homeless woman this was, because there was always one crazy lady out there shouting in the wee hours on that little alleyway there, Avon Street. Was that it? Was that
not Avon, but the other one next to Boda, Vernon Place.
Oh, I see. That's where it was. Well, this lady's often doing some screaming and shouting on Avon Street. And it's funny, one of my managers at my place of employment has this story about, he went to the Christmas Spectacular at the Merrill Auditorium there on Congress Street with his family. And afterwards...
This is like choral music for Christmas and what have you. Lots of poinsettia plants and candlelights and whatnot. It's supposed to be spiritual and all that.
Yeah. And so afterwards, they're having a family dinner Man, what's that fancy place in Monument Square where we went there?
David's?
Yes, that's the one. So we went to David's with the family and whatnot, and he's got like 2 daughters with him and his wife, and the youngest daughter, feeling the Christmas spirit, wants to like give her fries to a homeless person. So there's like smash cut in this like this woman who's having a full on existential crisis. She's like, "What am I doing here?" She's like, "I'm like drugs and whatnot." And so my manager's like, "Yeah, go ahead, give her your fries."
Wow,
and
how'd
she's
that
like,
work out for them?
and she's like leaning
well.
back into her, like she's recoiling into his hands as he's jokingly urging her forward.
Oh my god!
But the thing is I'm pretty sure I know who that woman is because I've heard her wails like in the piercing, like the early morning Portland air, like many times. And so, yep. It's a crazy place.
You ought to log on to the WGME 13 website, have a go at the mugshot, and see if indeed it is the person that you're thinking it is, Brian.
I mean, you want me to do it right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it may take a second to find the story in question, but yeah. So it may. I'm not sure if you can easily find it.
WGME Vernon Street.
If you want to look for it, I'll just move on to talk about the Bruins Game 3, which is tonight. Pretty excited. I'm going to go to our dad's house in just a few minutes as soon as we hang up this call, Brian. And it's going to be Bruins Game 3. It has been fun to watch playoff hockey. The Fiends up in Buffalo really made the first 2 games a lot of fun with their voluminous screaming, their energy. I mean, you can tell those guys have been on a lengthy playoff drought. I think they've been out of the playoffs for like 15 years. So that's pretty cool. I always enjoy this time of year, Brian, when it gets warm outside and the hockey playoffs are on. And the Red Sox, unfortunately, started their season among the worst of all times and have quickly become the regional embarrassment. But at least we got these Bruins, so that'll be entertaining.
Well, all right, and I did find this mugshot on WGME, and
Yep.
now I'm not sure. I more like know her by her, I don't know, the screaming and whatnot and how she sounds. It's hard to tell. She looks like many other homeless people. But anyway, with regards to the Bruins Sabres playoff series, I think it's obviously there's some kind of extension of like the Patriots Buffalo rival or Patriots Bills rivalry. But I mean, with regards to the Sabres, though, they've mostly gotten destroyed by the Bruins for like well over a decade at this point, and so I just don't really feel the same sense of rivalry here.
Yeah.
And so even though
I admire their team and their beautiful jerseys. They have the best in the NHL. I'll be rooting for them.
Yeah, even though they're the number 1 seed, I feel like the Bruins can win if they don't get jobbed. I mean, they kind of narrowly lost the first game, and they mostly dominated the second game. So we'll see how it goes tonight, huh?
Yeah, and they did dominate for stretches in game. Well, maybe they didn't really dominate game 1. They more like got out to a lead and held on. But well, anyway, it is thrilling. Hopefully we can go in person to Game 6 down to Boston. We were thinking about going to tonight's game, Brian, but I was like, please, let's just push it to next week because I have to go back to Boston tomorrow night to catch a flight down to Florida. That is why we are recording this podcast a little bit on an unusual schedule on a Thursday night versus our usual Sunday morning coffee-fueled romp. But I was also in Boston earlier this week for the Boston Marathon, which was a lot of fun to go down there on marathon weekend. The Red Sox, of course, have their annual 11 a.m. start on Patriots Day. I didn't go to the game. I was there to cheer on my good buddy who was running for. The dude he's lost his dad and his brother to cancer, and he's one of these. He's one of these people who's really dedicated to raising money to help people who are stricken with that horrific disease. And so he was completing like the 5 stars or 6 stars. He did marathons all over the world, like Tokyo, Berlin, New York. And so the Boston Marathon was the last and final, crown jewel. And so they gave him this huge medal. It's like 5 medals fused together. But I don't know, Brian, I'm suggesting to you right now that we'd ought to make especially now that you're down in Rhodey, we ought to make an annual pilgrimage into Boston for the marathon and for the Patriots matinee each and every Patriots Day going forward. What do you say to that, Brian? Can you commit to every Patriots Day in Boston from here on out?
Perhaps, yeah. The Red Sox, that would be the matinee we'd watch on Patriots Day, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, unless I don't think the Bruins would have a playoff game. I guess they could by some, but yeah, you go to the 11 a.m. start is perfect because when the game gets out, all the fans can flat out down to Kenmore Square and onto Boylston Street, where they can then watch the runners make their approach to the finish line. So all in all, it makes for a pretty festive day. And we live so close to Boston; it's silly to miss out on all these fun events. I did take the commuter rail out to Framingham to see my buddy running at various stops along the race. And it was fun to drive by all those New England, triple deckers with the keg parties going on. Everyone's off work because it's Patriots Day, and you could see, those classic Boston triple decker apartments, where all the students live because they're kind of shabby. And like there was tons of exciting parties and people's in the streets. I don't know if you saw San Jose Sharks superstar Macklin Celebrini doing like a keg stand. Someone posted up on socials. He was in Boston at one of these crazy parties. I don't know why this Canadian kid who plays in San Jose was in Boston for the party. But it was also good to see Bruins captain Zdeno Chara making his long strides down the marathon route. I guess it's his annual thing that he likes to do. So all in all, Brian, you and me, we'll get our dad, maybe our brother, we'll make it happen.
What did I guess I wonder, did your friend feel like, I guess like the Boston Marathon, it has like Heartbreak Hill and all that. Like, did he think that this one was like harder than the others? Did you have any opinion like that?
He said Heartbreak Hill was no big deal. I mean, it's really not that steep an incline around mile 20 in Boston Marathon. Heartbreak Hill out there in Newton, Mass. But he said it wasn't so bad. The legend of Heartbreak Hill is that it's just where it is in the race psychologically. They say that runners often their bodies break down, their mind breaks down around the mile 20, and that's just where that hill is. So that's why it's got that moniker Heartbreak Hill. But yeah, all in all, Brian, really good take. It's like we just really, I mean, it's so easy to go there on the bus here from Portland. The bus goes to South Station. You can just, and then you just, all of Boston is at your disposal from there. Very easy to do.
I wish that it'd be fun to go out there and be like partying and whatnot. I wish that like if only drinking wasn't completely untenable and it didn't set you up for like days of like terrible sleep and low dopamine levels.
These thoughts crossed my mind too. There's a little part of me that was like, man, it would be fun to get an invite to one of these crazy parties. But on the other hand, it would have been fun 20 years ago. It would just be a disaster now. Like, you'd be like crippled for an entire week, as you said, Brian.
All right.
I did want to. I thought you'd be pleased by this little anecdote. We were on a fairly full bus ride going down to Boston, of course, and so I had to sit next to a stranger, and the stranger was a little old lady, and she was on her phone. And what was she watching on the bus ride down? None other than your favorite Professor Zhang. She was watching his opinions on like Instagram or something like one of these apps, short video apps. So I thought you'd be amused to hear that Professor Zhang's face is out there. It's not just the breaking points people. It's it seems to be out there among the normies too.
Well, I have two thoughts about that. One, Professor Zhang was once again on the Jimmy Dore show for another hour and a half interview just a few days ago. And the course of the conversation led to one of my favorite topics wherein, Jimmy Dore, he's into like Jungian dream analysis. And he used to like pay like a Jungian therapist, like, I don't know, like hundreds of dollars. I don't know, probably at least $100 a session to go in there and interpret his dreams. And they would only have time to like analyze like a dream or two in the hour-long session. And he talked about how he's using ChatGPT or maybe Grok or one of these AI engines to do Jungian dream analysis of his dreams.
He meaning Jimmy is doing this or Professor Zhang is doing
Jimmy
this?
Dore is.
Jimmy's doing this. Okay, got it. Yep.
And so I think that is a great use of AI, and I thought that was interesting. And then the other thing is, it's certainly great that this old lady is listening to Professor Zhang, but the social media like burnout or whatnot is like intense, man. There's like way too much stimulation going on that, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. I mean, you got this crazy war in Iran, and then all the scientists are dying, and that's like actually getting coverage on the mainstream media. These scientists studying, anti-gravity methods and whatnot. And
we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Yeah.
And then I don't know, the Epstein thing before, and I don't know. There's just like seemingly no escape, or there's just way too many rabbit holes to go down, and it's absolutely wild.
Yeah, it really. I mean, that was the point of our the main thrust, the main thesis, if I dare say, of last week's podcast. Of course, like how are you even supposed to figure out what's going on, given just how much. I mean, it used to be that people would be like, just people would get little crumbs of information. You know, it would take like months for news to get across the Atlantic, and now it's like drinking from the fire hose, and like the psychology of that just makes it very, very difficult. But you have to weigh that against like we really are watching history shape itself in real time. And man, there is just something so compelling about that. Like I'm dying to know what the next chapter is going to be. And such a wild story, the great sweep of history. You know, it seems that we are at a major inflection point or cusp of history, and so it's like, man, I want to follow what's going on, but I want to do so in a way that doesn't destroy my mental health, which is, I think, the point you were making moments ago.
Yeah.
And then the other issue is it's hard to actually discern what's going on. Like there's just so much, like especially with the rise of AI generated video, it is just really hard to tease apart what's really going on from what's from what people want us to think is going on. And so I don't know. That's why my two main touchstones are breaking points. You know, the non-corporate news, and then also the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal is going to not report on a whole list of things that they should be reporting on, but the things they do say are going to be actually verifiable, right? So it's like you get this weird Swiss cheese picture of reality from the Wall Street Journal, and then you can fill in the cracks with our good friends Crystal and Sagar over on Breaking Points. So I don't know, Brian, what's your strategy been? I will admit that I've also been on Reddit. Like I had really taken a lot of time off of Reddit and had just been posting my essays. But since this war in Iran took place like at the end of February, I mean, I have just been on a nonstop Reddit binge, and I can just feel how deleterious it is. The infinite scroll, you know, I can feel how it destroys my concentration or my ability to have an attention span.
Yeah, well,
so I don't know. How are you faring, Brian?
Well, I've been mainlining it into my veins at all hours with no rest.
And how's that working out for you?
It's not going great. I had to do like this project for work. I was working on my Excel sheet programming and working on this report and whatnot, and it was like it took like 4 days of working with Excel and ChatGPT to finesse it to how I wanted it to be. And that whole, that effort has left me a withered husk, basically, on top of everything else that's going on.
Right, yeah, you had an exhausting week. It's going to be. Let's see, you took today off. Does that mean you're back to the grind on Friday, or have you got a 4-day weekend?
I am going back to work tomorrow. I think I had some meetings or something, but I was trying to knock out my vehicle registration and license update, Rhode Island license, and only 1 for 2 on those fronts. But it is back to work tomorrow. But at least we'll be easy to go to work for one day in any case.
Well, in the aforementioned news that's killing us and making it hard to maintain any semblance of mental health in this crazy world we live in, we had another major Trump taco on Tuesday. You know, Trump always chickens out or whatever. Like it was the expiration of the Donald's fearsome 2-week deadline. I mean, I can't even really keep track of the deadlines at this point. Where he was going to, bring down the hammer on the Iranians, bridges and tunnels if they couldn't come to some kind of a deal. But of course, no one's come to some kind of a deal. And the latest news is that the negotiating team from Tehran is not even going to bother to show up to help hammer out any kind of a plan here. So we just sit at a stalemate, and oil prices, drift gradually. The price of Brent crude back over $100 today at close. So yeah, I mean, it's just we're just kind of waiting and holding pattern to find out how this ridiculous crisis is going to shake out.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, because Trump announced victory, and then that quickly fell apart, and then we were reaching peace with Iran or something. I just don't even know where we're at right now. But I just don't see how. I mean, obviously, Iran's not going to like relinquish control of the Strait of Hormuz, and so it is what it is. I guess I don't know how they're gonna like re-inject this story. I guess is what we were saying last week, to a point where anyone like can actually take it seriously anymore.
Yeah. I think we're going to see. If you finish your thought there, Brian. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, the Donald, I guess, has just completely disgraced himself, and it's amazing how he's squandered all the credibility he has, and it's just him and like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro
Yeah.
and
The
like
Warhawks. Yeah.
it's just crazy. The overwhelming support that he had has been completely squandered. Well, Norm Finkelstein, he was on Breaking Points, like, I think it was like the Friday before last now. It's like an older interview. But he was saying how, like, like young people were too into conspiracy theories, which just seems like absolutely crazy. I mean, if it wasn't for, like, the anti-gravity scientists all being, like, murdered, or I don't know, like,
Oh, yeah, and the Epstein files rolling out with satanic child sacrifice,
grape soda
like,
and cheese pizza, man.
Grape soda and cheese pizza. We got Secretary of State Marco Rubio coming out announcing that the Israelis got us into this war, and the New York Times confirming what the secretary, the secretary said, a couple 3 weeks ago. I mean, it is just like, if ever there was a time for a spot of conspiratorial thinking, one might think that the current set of historical circumstances might warrant it. But apparently not Mr. Norm Finkelstein. Is he a doctor? What's his credentials?
I don't know.
Finkelstein, not on board with any conspiracies.
Crusty
the problem is too much conspiratorial thinking rather than crazy conspiracies that have been brought to light recently.
I think he's a crusty old like boomer professor or something.
I think he's one of these anti-Israel Jews, right? He's like an anti-Zionist Jew. I think that's probably why he's making the rounds. But man, what a bizarre opinion, dude! I just can't. Like, what? Like, how does he think that people are gonna? How does he think that's gonna land? I mean, you're trying to like shape people's opinion with this idea that you're being too It's just too much, man. It's just one bridge too far. I mean, we have just been. I mean, conspiracy theorists have been right over. Like, what's the saying? If you want to find out tomorrow's news, ask a conspiracy theorist. There's a whole bunch of jokes like that going around because so many have been borne out recently. That really is. I did not see this interview. Otherwise, it surely should have rustled my jimmies, just as it seems to have rustled yours.
Well, Professor Zhang is like probably the anti-Finkelstein then, because I mean he like specifically talks about the influence of like secret societies on what's going on in the world. And now you got like little old ladies on the subway like taking in his content. And it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I wonder, Brian, did you see this little article from truthout.org this week? Fascinating stuff here. But I'll just read the headline. Top Biden official supports Trump-Iran attack, says Biden may have done the same. This guy, Hochstein, said, this is the subhead. Hochstein said Democratic officials simulated attacks on Iran because that may have had to happen under our watch. Absolutely wild, dude. This dude, Amos Hochstein, I guess, senior energy advisor to Biden in the State Department, said that the headline says it all. Said that the Biden administration was modeling out war games because they were aware that they might have to go into Iran soon. So it really lends credence to this whole idea that no matter who you vote for, you're always going to get John McCain, right? That's the saying that I always hear from comedian Dave Smith, and it's just so like true. Like there's no. Whether you vote for Biden/Harris or vote for the Donald, you're getting a war in Iran, no matter how vociferously these parties campaigned against that very thing on the campaign trail. Not that Senator Harris bothered to distinguish herself from the Biden administration in any meaningful way, but there you have it. I mean, it's really wild.
John Kerry was on the Colbert Show like last night, saying how like the Bush and Clinton administrations knew not to go to war with Iran because in all their war games they instantly closed the Strait of Hormuz. But on the other hand, like everyone who's part of the establishment or whatever is going to be saying that also. So it's kind of hard to be sure. So I don't know. It seems like it probably like was our destiny one way or another to be going through this conflict. It seems like an inevitability, after the wars in Iraq and, Afghanistan and I don't know, going back to like the assassination of JFK and the wars in Vietnam and I don't know, like it's the whole thing basically.
Yeah. I cannot remember where I heard this brilliant comparison. I can't give them credit, but it's not me that thought it up. But the idea here is that if you compare, like American society to like an elementary school, we think when we go to the elections, when we go to the voting booths, that we're electing like the principal of the school, but really we're electing like the student president, who doesn't really do anything, right? It's all totally just a game for the benefit of the students, right? It's not really going to affect policy, and that's exactly how that article from Truth Out made me feel, being like, oh, so there's no voting your way out of this one. It's like we're going to a war. We're going to war with Iran, and there's nothing. The voting public apparently has no say in that. Truly, democracy has died. If that is the case, and I do believe that is the case.
Well, part of the problem with Norm Finkelstein's analysis, is that our politicians are obviously subservient to their billionaire donors, and so I just don't know how. It's just really a couple people that are really in charge. Like, obviously, the rich and powerful run the show, and democracy is like an outlet for the masses. And what does he think of like the whole Bernie Sanders business? Always bending the knee to the Democratic establishment and whatnot.
I can't imagine. That was really the radicalizing conspiracy for me. The what do you call it? The collusion by the DNC powers to exclude Bernie in 2016 and 2020. Really a big wake-up call. We all know in 2016 that Hillary was getting her debate questions, in advance from the major news networks. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chairman, had to step down in disgrace over the scandal. I mean, there was lawsuits that worked. It was a big deal. It was a very revealing moment in American politics. Then in 2020, they did it again. Barack Obama made the rounds on the eve of Super Tuesday, and that week, what is it? Tom Steyer, Amy Klobuchar, and Pete Buttigieg dropped out in concert, but Elizabeth Warren stayed in the primary to split the lefty, Bernie Sanders vote, and that is how Joe Biden, who had like finished like last place in like Las Vegas, or like he had finished like in last place in New Hampshire and like second to last in Las Vegas, or some terrible, he did some terrible showing like that. But having all of his centrist moderate rivals drop out, but having the lefty Bernie Sanders types stay in, that was able to rocket him to victory in the primary. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, they kept Elizabeth Warren in the race to kind of like to take pressure or take votes away from Bernie Sanders. And so it was Warren and Sanders and Biden for a hot minute there.
Finkelstein doesn't think that that's relevant to American politics, though.
Well, the other thing is in various media sources, James Lee was talking about it, but also Tucker Carlson and his brother Buckley there were talking about how like people aren't really buying the Trump assassination anymore. Attempts, leading up to the election, and like obviously that picture of him, like with the American flag behind him, like raising his fist and telling the audience to fight or whatever, it was a very galvanizing moment, and it certainly made me believe that Donald was, fighting against the deep state. But they talk about, just the Donald's completely uninterested in these like two assassination attempts and who might have pulled them off. And the point that James Lee was making is there's like this crane behind him with a flag, and so he gets shot, and then they like lower the flag down to get this shot exactly the way you'd want. And so I don't know, man. It's really crazy. Like obviously someone was actually killed in that assassination. One of the supporters in the background got hit by a bullet. And I don't know. I mean, the way things have gone, though, it certainly seems. I mean, he's obviously completely an establishment shill, the Donald at this point. So he's obviously not fighting against the deep state. So anyway, that was a crazy rabbit hole that occupied my attention in the wee hours of the night.
What is your best guess? Do you think there's any chance that the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, in the summer of 2024 was anything other? Was like some kind of a stunt or a staged event? I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, I do like where I think I would have to see better evidence, I guess, but I will at least go as far as I think that there were elements within our own state that were determined to go to war and did not, and wanted to remind the Donald that they, like same with Charlie Kirk. I believe that this war in Iran had to happen for the interests of a narrow, super wealthy international banking elite. but it's not good for the rest of us, and they have to make sure that no politicians, or no prominent public figures stray out, don't color outside the lines, stray from that message. But I wonder what you think, Brian. I mean, what in your heart of hearts do you think is possible, that whole Butler PA thing?
Well, I mean, I think that the Donald was being financially supported by the Adelsons, and like obviously, I mean, the Donald needed to get reelected to avoid further lawfare from like the Democratic Party, and so he was in a spot of desperation, and so he's just a very useful pawn for our reptilian overlords and all this. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like anyone really takes like the Charlie Kirk and Trump like lone gunman theories anymore. Yeah. Like anytime it's like a lone gunman, you can be pretty sure that it's not. These lone gunman stories are just like too like hard to swallow at this point, and I don't think anyone takes them seriously.
Mob tactic, right? Pin it on some patsy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeesh. Yeah. Well, it's a grim set of circumstances politically. It does seem that the machinery of state is totally disconnected from any sort of democratic oversight. And with respect to the current crisis in Iran, I think that means we're just going to have to wait for the energy crisis to hit. I mean, it doesn't seem to me that the financial markets are taking seriously the huge looming financial crisis that's headed our way. I mean, our gas prices are elevated, but they're not but we haven't seen the massive inflation shock at the grocery store that we're going to see several months down the line. And in other countries, the energy crisis is already happening with full throat. I mean, you may have heard the South Korean prime minister begging people to stay home and conserve gas. I mean, it's really in Asia where a much greater percentage of their oil comes from these Middle Eastern oil fields. I mean, they are already in full-on energy crisis, and I can't understand why the oil prices are even hovering around $100 a barrel. They should be much higher, because we're just going to see nothing but dysfunction and gridlock with respect to the Straits of Hormuz for the foreseeable future. Yeah, I think we're going to see massive inflation, massive skyrocketing in the price of energy and food, especially next year with so much fertilizer comes from the oil products that are shipped through the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, we're looking at a serious shock to the global economy, and our financial markets aren't taking the possibility of a generational recession into account at all. So we're just in this weird, eerie stasis, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I mean, I guess that it must be the point of the Donald strategy with these negotiations with Iran is to try to forestall the inevitable crazy spike in gasoline. That must be part of the calculus. But it sure was crazy going into during COVID. I guess there were some times going to the grocery stores. You're like, wow, there's not a lot of food here, and no toilet paper and paper towels, and I'd have to imagine that that's probably coming back. So not encouraging.
I'll tell you, I'm always on here crowing about the benefits of the Walmart Plus free delivery program. And sometimes you're the beneficiary of a happy mistake. And I was the beneficiary of one such mistake last week when two massive, in addition to my groceries, the Spark delivery driver, for whatever reason, dropped off a bunch of huge flats of Poland Spring water. I got 4 of those huge jugs and 2 of those 36 racks. So I put those in the basement, and I also ordered up a couple of they make these big, these 5.5 gallon buckets, and they're filled with freeze dried food. It has like 1,000 meals or 100 meals in it or something like that. So I got 2 of those buckets, and those are going to arrive tomorrow. Those will go in the basement. So I think that we're looking at a serious enough shock where you might feel good having just where you can get by for a couple of weeks if the grocery stores don't open or the banks don't open or something like that happens. I think that's what we're hurtling towards here.
I don't know. It's I think we're in the calm, before the storm here. Yeah. That's what I'd have to imagine.
Do you remember there was a similar eerie calm before the storm in the lead up to COVID? It was we were hearing about this weird disease, seeing shocking videos out of China, and then all at once, I remember this day. All at once, all of these flights got canceled, and the NBA canceled their season, and Donald was having announcements on the TV. It was pretty wild in the early days of 2020, February of 2020, and the first week or 2 of March, and it took a while for the financial markets to really go into panic mode. And so, yeah, that's exactly where we must be here. Just hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Every expert I've heard, talking about these things, makes the point that even if the Iranian Hormuz crisis were resolved today, we would still be looking at a massive, massive economic shock. Months down the line, 2, 3 months out, and and it just seems like no one's taking it seriously. I don't know. It's like we live in this weird, strange reality now.
I would have to agree. Yep, it's a little eerie.
Yeah. Well, Brian, we don't want to let too much time get by before we turn our guns on the curious case of missing scientists. I asked Google's Gemini large language model to just give us a rundown of the 10 scientists who have all disappeared. And I wonder if you want to make some comments before I read this little summary, Brian, or if you want to get to the summary and then comment after.
Well, aren't we up to like 12 or 13 now? Because just a few more have like died in the past couple of days.
Have there a okay, well, we can ask the large language model. In fact, why don't you ask the internet while I read this brief summary here?
Sure.
Okay. So I asked about 10 missing scientists because that was the number 2 days ago when I was doing this, and the summary I got goes a little something like this. The reports involving 10 scientists and high-level officials have gained significant traction recently, especially after being addressed in a White House press briefing on April the 15th, 2026. The cases involve a mix of missing persons and mysterious deaths, many of whom were linked to aerospace, nuclear research, or UFO programs. Here's a rundown of the 10 individuals frequently cited in current reports. Number 1, General Neil McCaslin, retired Air Force Major General, disappeared from his home in February the 27th, 2026, from his home in New Mexico. He left behind his phone and glasses, but reportedly took a pistol. This guy oversaw massive science and technology budgets and was historically linked to UFO disclosure discussions. Next here, Monica Reza disappeared last summer in June of 2025 while hiking near Mount Waterman, California. And she was a senior aerospace engineer and technical fellow at Aerojet Rocketdyne/JPL. She was a leading expert in advanced rocket propulsion materials and nickel-based superalloys. And her disappearance story, this is me talking, is the craziest one because she was hiking with her friends and she was like last in line, walking along. They lost sight of her for seconds and then couldn't find her again. She just vanished into thin air without a trace. Absolutely bizarre. Next here is Stephen Garcia. Garcia vanished last summer also in Albuquerque in August of 25. He was a contractor for the Kansas City National Security Campus, which manufactures components for the U.S. nuclear arsenal. He also served as a property custodian for high-value classified equipment. Next up, Melissa Casillas disappeared also last summer in June after being seen walking along a highway in New Mexico. And her work is administrative professional at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Of course, that's famous for nuclear research. Her disappearance was noted for her phone being left behind and wiped clean. Anthony Chavez disappeared also last summer in May. He was a researcher also at Los Alamos National Labs. Very few details have been released regarding the specific circumstances of his case. So those are the disappearances, and here we have some mysterious or violent deaths. Nuno Loureiro shot multiple times in the foyer of his Brookline, Massachusetts apartment last December. Of course, he was a director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. And this guy was the one who was gunned down by his college rival from back in Portugal, the Brown shooter, you may recall, Brian. That dude that he shot up the Brown campus and then went up to Boston and shot his former rival in physics up here in Boston. Next is Carl Grillmair. He was gunned down on his front porch in California in February of this year. He was a Caltech astrophysicist and NASA JPL researcher. His work involved galactic structures and asteroid tracking technology used by the Air Force for missile defense. Again, another one here, Jason Thomas disappeared in December. His body was recovered from Lake Quannapowitt in March of 2026. Official reports cited no sign of foul play. This guy was the assistant director of chemical biology at Novartis, and he was involved in complex biochemical research with potential military and defense applications. Lake Quinnipiac is in Massachusetts, by the way. Frank Mywald, he died in July of 24 under unknown circumstances that were not publicly detailed by NASA or JPL. He was a JPL principal researcher and expert in instrumentation for detecting life beyond our solar system. All right, last case here is Michael David Hicks. He also died in 24, and his death is often cited by researchers as the start of the trend, though fewer public details exist regarding the specific case. And he was also a veteran researcher at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, for 24 years. Brian, I wonder, did you find evidence of more than just these 10? That was the number was at earlier this week.
Well, the Google AI overview says that as of April 2026, roughly 11 to 13 scientists, engineers, and researchers linked to NASA and the Department of Defense and whatnot have been reported missing or dead. So I guess the most recent one, though, is like in March. Was Jason Thomas on your list?
Yeah, I had that one.
All right. So I don't know. Maybe they're just counting more. And like I was watching some videos from like Amy Eskridge, and I guess she died back in 2022. And she made some social media post or something, or these were making the rounds on their Twitter and whatnot. And she was talking about how she was being followed by someone in a Lexus, and she was saying how she was being the target of like these I don't know, like these weapons that I don't know make you like hard to think and whatnot. What do you call that? Like the Havana syndrome type weapons or whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd call them, like ray weapons, or I'm not even sure what you'd call it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And she's got like photos of like her hands like being discolored because apparently they're targeting her when she's working on her computer, and like she like barricaded the doors in her apartment and whatnot to like reduce the influence of these things. So anyway, it's all pretty crazy.
Speaking of unfamiliar weapons, there was a great piece in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. And the headline is, behind Trump's public bravado on the war, he grapples with his own fears. The president's impulsive style, this is the subhead, the president's impulsive style has never been tested during a sustained military conflict, ruminating on Jimmy Carter. So what's happening here is that Donald apparently is in private worried that he's going to be, have one of these presidencies that is largely regarded as a disaster, just like Mr. Carter. But that's not the point. The point was this line here. I just want to read this quote. Rubio told others. This is about how since the war started, the Trump's inner circle has had increased security. In fact, I'll just read both sentences here. In recent weeks, for example, Trump and his team have noticed an increase in security. On a cloudless night in April at Mar-a-Lago, every umbrella was up on the patio in an unusual arrangement, guests said. Club members were told that there was an effort to limit drone visibility, a Mar-a-Lago member said. Rubio told others about standing outside his home at the military compound where he lives and watching a suspicious drone, administration officials said. Secret Service protection teams have expanded to carry weapons White House officials had never seen before. They just casually dropped that in, that the protection teams are carrying weapons that White House officials can't identify. That's really strange. But not sure why they included that. I mean, I don't know what it adds to this story about the Donald worrying that he's going to be the next Jimmy Carter. But yeah, it's just so, we just live in this, we all know that the government is in possession of technology that's far advanced of what we are allowed to know about as the public. A great example is the F-117 Nighthawk stealth bombers that were rolled out during the first Iraq War in 1991. Those F-117s, they're not the big flying wings, Brian. Those are the B-2s. This is the smaller version with the twin tails that stick up, shaped like a delta. Anyway, these odd-looking planes were rolled out during, the Operation Gulf Storm. And the Pentagon said, you're going to see some strange airplanes here. These are some of our classified work that we're rolling out onto the battlefield. And indeed, the F-117 comes from It comes from like the 70s. It was like 20-year-old tech at that point. So it only leads us civilians to wonder what is going on. Why? How much technology does the government have that they're keeping secret from the rest of us? And this makes me think of the theory of Dr. Eric Weinstein, Brian, that something has been like science, the government realized during World War II that physics, in particular, was a matter of national security, and that fact was advertised by the nuclear explosions, in the deserts of New Mexico, and then the subsequent blast on Japan in August of 1945. And I mean, when you think about it, like this whole business of trying to prevent the Iranians from having a nuclear weapon, the famous history podcaster Dan Carlin would point out, this is 80-year-old military tech. It's not like you're going to be able to prevent countries from availing themselves of military technologies that are like a century old or 2 century old, right? It's not possible or reasonable. It's not a goal that we should have. And Weinstein, Dr. Eric Weinstein, is always making the point that I forgot the name of the guy who he made a bet with a famous nuclear physicist, and I just can't remember which one it was. But the bet was basically that this graduate student would be able to recreate nuclear technology, right? Rediscover nuclear technology, how to make a nuclear bomb on his own without any help from the physics community. That was going to be his grand doctoral thesis, and he was able to do it. But the simple fact of the matter is that nuclear technology is not that hard, right? The atomic blasts over Hiroshima and Nagasaki were simple technology. One was like essentially two guns with fissile material for bullets, and the two guns just shoot at each other. And the other one's just like a bunch of fissile material with a big bomb packed around it. The big boy. You just detonate the explosives around this, and it crushes a ball of fissile material, starting a nuclear chain reaction. Real easy to do. And so that has led Dr. Eric Weinstein to make the podcast rounds with this theory that physics is being controlled, that string theory, which public physics has been obsessed with since the 1970s, is some kind of a dead end or a red herring designed to throw us, the public, off the scent or the trail of what's really going on behind the scenes, and that physics, public-facing physics, in other words, is being somehow strangled or controlled by the nefarious forces of the government. And that this might explain why, if you look around your room right now, other than the screens, there's not a lot to suggest that this is not the 1970s. Or to put it another way, it was like 60 short years, less than 60 years between the Wright brothers. I guess it was 7 years, 65 years between the Wright brothers' first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and the Apollo mission landing on the moon in 1969, right? So I guess that's 66 years, right? You just saw the world completely transformed by technology between, say, 1900 and 1960. But then that progress seems to have fallen off noticeably. And Dr. Weinstein thinks that some kind of control over the world of physics is to blame. Brian, did I give Dr. Weinstein's theory justice with that little diatribe there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only missing point is that like Epstein was super interested in scientists and whatnot, and I forget the name of his ranch next to Alamo or whatever, where they're supposed to be buried bodies or whatever. But yeah, he was trying to get all the scientists to go over there, and I think it seems pretty clear at this point. I mean, especially what with all the UFO sightings and whatnot, it all seems very hard to refute at this point.
How could I have forgotten to bring up the Epstein piece, Brian? I'm glad that someone's paying attention. Yeah, that is perfect. Yes, absolutely. Epstein himself, obsessed with science, particularly anti-gravity. He famously had a whole bunch of physicists to his island down there in the U.S. Virgin Islands for some gravity conference. That's why Stephen Hawking was down there. They got a picture of him with a couple of broads with, drinks and the floaty drinks, and straws and umbrellas, having a good time. He like Dr. Eric Weinstein himself got an invite to Epstein's New York City apartment house, whatever it is, his townhouse, his New York City brownstone, where Epstein wanted to find out what Weinstein knew about gravity and whatnot. It was just like his testimony is that Dr. Eric Weinstein's testimony is that Jeffrey Epstein seemed like some kind of a construct, that the man really had no idea about science, but he was, for whatever reason, whatever reason, very, very interested in it. So yeah, man, we really are in a state here where man, I'm thinking about Norman Finkelstein saying that, we really are given to too much conspiracy thinking. It's just so absurd. Yeah. So that brings us to missing scientists here, Brian. Like, if it is in fact the case that the government is hiding some kind of a secret with, quantized gravity, or being able to control gravity, or some kind of a gravity drive that can propel some of these bizarre lights we've been seeing in the sky, well, it makes sense that this secret would have to be contained, possibly violently, and that maybe that's why we're seeing, these list of scientific bodies piling up. It sure is really, really strange.
Yeah, one of the things that Amy Eskridge woman was saying is that, like, I guess the secret of anti-gravity had been discovered 4 times before, and
wow, really? Huh.
And she was under, I guess she she's saying how she needs to disclose or something, and I don't know what it all means, man. Well, I mean, I think what it all means, yeah, there's a reason why, culturally, we're just completely bankrupt, and the music and media in general are terrible, and that just culturally we're not really going anywhere.
Yeah, and I think the malaise is designed to keep the current, ruling elite, the current, the current top echelons, of our society in terms of wealth. It's designed to keep them in place. And when you think about it, the implications of a gravity drive is that we would have 0 point energy, right? That energy would no longer be scarce. But scarcity is a major means of keeping the population under control, right? You keep people scared of missing a meal or getting evicted from their house if they get fired from their job, or if they get fired from their job, they want to have health care, right? I mean, if all of those limitations are now, if scarcity really is, really is a thing of the past, it seems like in all times and places, when great empires fall, you find people trying to prevent the fall of the empire. They're trying to hold on to the old ways, even though the old ways aren't working so well anymore. In other words, oftentimes you find the ruling elite trying to dam up the great river of history to impede its progress from flowing on to new forms where they might not be so privileged. And but the thing about damming up history is that the pressure builds and builds and builds and builds. And yeah, it just feels like with this weird, eerie stalemate over the Straits of Hormuz and the disappearing scientists, that we are just waiting for that inflection point, just that moment where everything changes. It certainly seems to be where we're at. I don't know. It's hard to escape that feeling of it's not a greatly dignified pursuit, Brian, for you and me to come on this podcast every week with the sandwich board saying the end is nigh. But I think there's serious reason to maybe engage in a spot of conspiratorial thinking and pay attention to the great economic epicycles of history that we seem to be subject to, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know if I would say it's that the end is nigh, but I don't know. What is it? I don't know. But it seems like the narrative sure is falling apart, and the cracks are becoming increasingly apparent. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's man. It's it really. It's not that if the end is nigh. I mean, that really is the end of the capitalist economic system. All right, that's all well and good. The end of our current banking system with its central banks. Well, that's probably good for everyone. But the thing about these times of economic collapse, Brian, is that they also come with major paradigmatic shifts. So much of the reality that we imagine ourselves living in is a projection from the elite classes, right? This business of preventing science from getting out to the public is a great example, right? So much of what we believe to be true is because we believe the things authority tells us. But the more dysfunction that authority has to lie to try to cover up, right, the more ridiculous those lies become. And man, yeah, it's just It just feels like our whole reality like stands to crumble here. Like our conception of reality is what I think is we're going to be reaching the end of. But I mean, I do think that once we get rid of like central banks and huge taxation schemes to fund massive war machines, then I do think that we're going to go through a period of chaos. But it's certainly going to be true that people in America are going to have to get by with a good deal less stuff than we're used to, like material things. But man, that's not everything. I think we're going to be happier for it once the band-aid is ripped off or the zit is burst or the whatever climax needs to happen, whatever conclusion we need to come to. I think that life's going to be much better for the rank and file once we get to the other end of this.
Well, it would be nice to be like conquering some kind of new frontier rather than doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, speaking of cycles of history, Brian, I stumbled across some pretty spicy quotes from Will and Ariel Durant this week while I was reading about their book. While I was reading in their book, The Age of Faith, which is a detailed history of the Middle Ages. Let's see, and I just want to read these two paragraphs here. They're pretty good. Nevertheless, it is almost a Newtonian law of history that large agricultural holdings, in proportion to their mass and nearness, attract smaller holdings, and by purchase or otherwise, periodically gather the land into great estates. In time, the concentration becomes explosive. The soil is redivided by taxation or revolution, and concentration is resumed. Pretty good. I thought that that was interesting. I mean, it really it just kind of shows the cyclical nature of history, to which I was just trying to elude, right? To refer to. It's like I like how Will and Ariel describe it as almost a law of nature that great estates will like gravity, right? You have a star that goes supernova into a big cloud of dust, and then the gravity starts sticking those little pieces of dust together into bigger and bigger masses, and then those bigger masses attract even more particles of dust. And before long, you get that dust turns into an accretion disk, and the accretion disk develops a star at the middle, and the leftover debris coalesces into the planets orbiting the star, right? Similar idea with finance, right? Small holdings coalesce into larger and larger holdings until they dominate the economy in what the Durants referred to as great estates. And then they note that in time, the concentration becomes explosive and the soil is redivided by taxation or revolution. And that is just the moment that we are living in right now.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
pretty good.
I would agree.
The Durants, there's a subtext here. The Durants are just talking about the Byzantine Empire, the Greek Roman Empire that persisted with Constantinople, nowadays Istanbul, as its capital up until the 1400s, right? And so the quote here is, "The wealth so gleaned from the flesh and sweat of millions of men gave the owners a power collectively dangerous to any sovereign. Out of self-interest as well as humanity, the emperors sought to halt this process of concentration. The severe winter of 927 ended in famine and plague. Starving peasants sold their holdings to great landowners at desperately low prices, or merely in exchange for subsistence. In 934, the regent Romanus issued a decree that denounced the landlords as having, quote, shown themselves more merciless than famine and plague, unquote. It required the restoration of properties bought for less than half a fair price and permitted any seller within 3 years to repurchase the land he had sold, and at the price he had received. The edict had only a negligible effect. Concentration continued. Moreover, many free farmers, complaining of high taxes, sold their lands and moved to the towns, if possible, to Constantinople and the dole." And that right there, really, you can really see how important the periodic debt forgivenesses are to maintaining society, right? Because it's just what the Durants were talking about in the paragraph before. You get the wealth concentrated together, and then when a crisis strikes, right, and the poor people all have to sell their property at distressed prices, and that's a major exacerbator of the concentration, cited by the Durants as a major cause of revolution. And by periodically wiping out debts, you can prevent that concentration, and it's really a choice between empire, right, and sustainability, and from that perspective. So,
yeah, well, no doubt, the concentration of wealth is like is stagnation, right? Like just throughout our culture and being. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, it's like it matches the stagnation in the sciences. All right, well, Brian, I guess we're coming up to the end of time, much to my regret. So I shall invite all of our listeners to pay us a little visit over to systemfailure.org. There you can sign up to read the weekly essays written by yours truly, and to receive them each and every Sunday morning right there in your email inbox. In addition, if you want to send a comment or a question to Brian or myself, you can get in contact with us simply by visiting the About page over to systemfailure.org and then clicking on the appropriate name. And with that, Brian and I are off, but we will be back next Monday with another regularly scheduled edition of the good old System Failure podcast. In the meantime, you can catch me with the weekly essay read on Thursday. Yes. And so on Thursday, I will talk to you all then. Can't wait to do it. Hope you're all having a great week.
All right. See you, folks.